Welcome to Call Frost First, Illinois Injury Law.
Welcome back to Call Frost First, Illinois Injury Law with KevinJFrost. Kevin is the managing partner of Clark Frost Zucchi and a trial attorney representing injured individuals and families across northern Illinois. He has secured multi-million-dollar settlements and verdicts in cases involving serious auto accidents, trucking crashes, wrongful death, and complex injury claims. I'm Chelsey, and today we're talking about what happens after a serious car accident in Illinois. Welcome back, Kevin.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Hey, right after a serious car accident, what are the most important steps someone should take at the scene?
Well, I think the most important thing initially is to get yourself to a safe space, right? It's a safe spot. I've actually had two cases where I've had someone be involved in a motor vehicle collision or an issue with a disabled vehicle, and while they're on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck, been injured, and one of them unfortunately fatally. So I always tell people to take care of your safety first. If you're able to exit the vehicle, exit your car and go to a safe spot, right? That's the most important thing. Secondly, obviously, if you're injured or anyone's injured, it's so important to call 911, or if you're unable to do that, to have somebody there at the scene. Call 911 so emergency medical personnel can arrive, right? And lastly, I think it's also very important to take pictures. These days everybody has a smartphone. Take 100 pictures. Take a picture of every spot, everything you think is important, and then double it, right? Because and if you're unable to take those photos, it's important to have somebody either that you're with, or sometimes even a witness, say, hey, would you mind taking some photos of the other vehicle, the other truck, where the damage took place, the scenery, signs, just so you have as many reference points as you can later down the road that could be important in an investigation of an accident.
And then once somebody leaves the scene, what should they focus on in the hours and days that follow?
Sure, I think initially, again, your injuries, right? If you need immediate medical care, get to the emergency department of a hospital, right? Either by ambulance or by a family member or by a friend. Get seen as quickly as possible. If you don't require immediate care, I think go home, rest, and call your primary care physician. Make an appointment to be seen. So if you're saying my knee hurts, always start there, and then perhaps you may get referred to an orthopedic surgeon for your knee injury or what have you, or whatever specialty you need. So, but it's important to get in and get seen as quickly as possible. Sometimes it takes a while to get in to see a specialist. So, you may call the next day and you may not get in for 2 or 3 weeks, but at least you've made the effort, because sometimes they'll use that against you. Like, well, why didn't you see a doctor for a month, right? And you can say, well, I did. I called the day of the injury. So I think that's very important as well to do. If you're unable to go to work, I think it's important to get an off work slip and have it verified by your physician, so you can bring it to work or send it to work and let them know that you're unable to work because you hurt your hand, your knee, your shoulder, what have you, and you're unable to work. I also think it's important to call your own insurance company, to notify them that you were in a motor vehicle collision, because sometimes your own policy has protections that are there. So many times people say, oh, I don't want to call my own insurance company because I'm afraid it's going to make my rates go up. Well, if you have medical payments provisions on your policy, odds are it's not going to make your rates go up, right? So it's important, I think, to make contact with them as well. And then I think if you have an injury that's significant, I think it's important to find somebody like me, right? I mean, right away. Do your homework, be diligent, try to find a local lawyer that specializes or works in the arena of personal injury law, and not someone that does personal injury and divorce or personal injury and bankruptcy, but someone, like I said, like myself, that focuses their career on representing injured individuals.
You touched on this a little bit, but why does and how does early medical treatment affect a potential injury claim?
Well, I think it verifies and authenticates your injury, right? If you go to the doctor right away, it's significant. It shows that you have an injury, and then you also, people don't realize, is you're really building a paper trail for your case, for your injury, right? If you don't go to the doctor or seek treatment and you wait a month and you're like go in and say, oh, my knee has been bothering me since this car accident a month ago. Later on down the road, somebody like the insurance company may think that it's an unrelated injury. Maybe you did it playing volleyball in a rec league over the weekend, or maybe it's really not that significant because you took so long to seek treatment, and if it was significant, you would have done something right away.
When insurance companies get involved, what usually happens during that first contact?
So normally the first contact by the adverse insurance company contacting a potential plaintiff, they always start out very nice. I'm with X insurance company. How are you doing? And then they start asking you more and more questions and digging in a little bit deeper. And sometimes it may not be for this, they're trying to trick you, but they're asking questions in their own interest, right? They're trying to perhaps pin you down on a liability issue to somehow say, well, maybe it was partially your fault, right? Maybe are you sure the light was yellow? And then someone says, well, I'm not, geez, I'm not sure. I thought it was yellow. And then, those statements can be used against you down the road. And also, they'll ask you about your injuries. Oh, it sounds like you're doing okay, right? You were able to go work yesterday. What else did you do? And they'll draw information out of somebody that, again, later on down the road, they'll try to imply that, well, your injuries really weren't that significant, and you kind of told me that when we talked on April 1st, right? So you kind of have to be careful because they're really good at befriending you, and then kind of sometimes tricking you. They may ask you questions like, "Oh, was your radio on?" Well, it's not illegal to drive a car. It doesn't make you negligent to drive a car with your radio on, but somehow they're inferring and getting you to somehow think and maybe second guessing yourself on maybe you did something wrong.
What types of documentation or evidence should someone be collecting or make sure that they preserve early on?
I think obviously everyone has, like I said before, everyone has a smartphone. Any information that you either videotaped or took photos of or made notes of on your phone, obviously it's important to save that. It's important to save, for instance, maybe your clothes were damaged, right? It's important to save those. Sometimes people want to look at shoes, right? So save your shoes. Not so much in a car case, but in a premise liability case, people want to look at how old were your shoes. So it's important to do that. Any documentation. Let's say you took your car to a body shop and there's an estimate. I mean, we're going to get it eventually, but it's important to save that. If they took any photographs and shared them with you, it's just important to make a file and just keep anything possibly related to your unfortunate motor vehicle collision. Right? You don't need to save medical records. I'll be able to get all of my clients' medical records and medical bills, so you don't need to save those. But it is so important to anything related to the car accident, either your vehicle, the scene. Let's say, for instance, there's a name of a witness, right? Sometimes the police officer may forget to put the name of a witness in a police report, but you are like, oh, when I was at the scene, I talked to Chelsey. And Chelsey gave me her phone number, her email address. So, I mean, those can be lifesavers on a case.
In more serious crashes, how is fault actually investigated and determined?
Well, a number of ways. I mean, obviously, a police report is the first thing somebody would normally look at to see whether or not what the police officer put down in his report or in his narrative. If there's a witness listed, right, it's important to see what the police officer indicated the witness said. Sometimes they don't, but hopefully they do. Those are initially, I think, very important. Secondly, most vehicles these days have what's called electronic data recorders, EDRs, on them. Sometimes we've had cases where it's a he said, she said, and the person thinks at fault says, "Oh no, I was there first, and I pulled out first, and I was at a stop, and the other car wasn't." Well, we've had cases where the EDRs have been used to look at data and see how fast one car was going as it approached the intersection. That individual didn't stop. He was going 26 miles an hour, prior to making a left turn without ever stopping. So it can give you a lot of information about each specific vehicle. I've had another case, unfortunately, involving a fatality where a pedestrian was hit by a vehicle, and the EDR was examined to determine that the driver of the vehicle was going 26 miles an hour over the speed limit. and it could have been, obviously a very important reason why he didn't slow down before striking the pedestrian. So they're utilized often in cases.
At what point does it make sense to involve an attorney after a car accident?
I think it's important to involve an attorney. I think before you talk to the adverse insurance company and give a recorded statement. And again, you have the right, let's say you haven't hired an attorney yet and they call you, you can say, hey, I'm not feeling well today, or I'm thinking about getting an attorney. I'll call you back. You're under no obligation at the adverse insurance company to give them a statement within a day. So I think in our sake, we'd rather have you call us as quickly as possible. Obviously, I get calls sometimes from someone that's still in the hospital, and you may not need to do that. But once you get home and you realize that you have a significant injury that's going to require you to return to a physician or multiple physician offices, I think it's a good time to call then.
Can you share an example when the steps that were taken early after an accident had a clear impact on how the case developed?
Yeah, for instance, I had a case where a witness was named in the police report, but the police officer failed to put down any information on what the witness stated. And sure enough, it was two left turn cars, and the adverse driver was really indicating that he saw this other person, they were driving recklessly, and he still pulled out. It just didn't make sense, right? So I was able to contact the witness right away, and we were able to get a statement from that witness initially, and then he was deposed once the case was filed, and his independent eyewitness testimony was convincing and clear to the case that allowed my client's case to move forward.
As a case moves forward, what does the overall timeline typically look like from accident to resolution?
Well, the most important factor in that is someone's level of healing, right? What were their injuries? If you had to have a rod and hardware put in your femur, and it's going to require 3 follow-up surgeries, and then a round of rehabilitation and physical therapy, your case is going to take longer than a case where someone had a shoulder injury and it resolved within 8 weeks. So really the most important factor is the time of you getting well, what I call your medical improvement, reaching your maximum medical improvement, because we're never going to try to hurry your case and hurry a settlement on your case so you can get paid less than your case is worth, right? We want to maximize the value of your entire case, and that won't be determined until obviously you're healed or fully healed or healed as good as you're going to be healed. And then obviously if it affected your work life and that you're able to go back to work, or we know what type of job restrictions you'll have moving forward. So those are all factors that affect the time and how long your case will take to resolve.
Well, that wraps another episode. Thank you so much, Kevin.
You're very welcome.
What happens in those first hours and days after an accident can clearly shape everything that follows. If you've been involved in a serious car accident in Northern Illinois and have questions about your next steps, you can contact Clark Frost Zucchi for a free consultation at clarkfrost.com. Thank you for listening to Call Frost First, Illinois Injury Law. If this episode was helpful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who may find it beneficial.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.